At first glance, in a world where ballistic advances, hypersonic missiles, and satellite surveillance are making the oceans increasingly transparent, the aircraft carrier might seem outdated, slow to build, expensive to maintain, requiring a specialized crew, slow to train, and vulnerable to new long-range threats. It therefore seems anachronistic. Yet China has just entered a new era with the commissioning of its third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, a choice that some will consider irrational in the era of technological warfare and highly monitored oceans. Yet the great Chinese masters are here giving a lesson on the viability of the aircraft carrier in 2025. Far from being buried behind this decision lies a simple and relentless motivation: geography. This natural constraint dictates to Beijing to go beyond simple coastal defense, to venture further. Above all, to control vital maritime routes for its energy and commercial supply. Fujian is not a relic of the past, but the cornerstone of a strategic ambition that reinvents Chinese naval power in the face of contemporary challenges. Welcome to Terra Bellum. Let's start from the beginning. China's rise to the rank of a major world power has been built above all on trade, and especially maritime trade. Nearly 80% of the oil imported by Beijing, and about 60% of its total trade. Of international maritime routes, especially through the Strait of Malacca. This narrow corridor, located between Malaysia and Indonesia, is far from the protection of Chinese coastal missiles, but well within the reach of American surveillance. China's submarines and land-based defenses can indeed deny access to certain areas and are part of its anti-access strategy, but they cannot ensure the free movement of its own ships, nor power projection. They can threaten enemy forces near the Chinese coast, but they do not guarantee the security of maritime flows on which its economy depends. This geographical reality therefore creates a major vulnerability. China remains dependent on maritime routes that it does not control in an area where American naval superiority remains a constant. Because while most states accommodate themselves to the maritime order led by Washington, Beijing, for its part, cannot afford such dependence. I also invite you to watch the video dedicated specifically to the Chinese strategy for breaking the American containment. Its economic stability and national security now require it to protect its trade routes and to redefine the strategic balance of the Asian maritime space to its advantage. And ensuring the security of maritime routes is not limited to simply navigating them, but requires the ability to control them. This command capability requires having a maritime center, both physical and mobile, for coordination. That is precisely the role that the Fujian will play, the role of the aircraft carrier. The goal for Beijing is very clear: to reduce its dependence on American control of vital maritime corridors, and to give its Navy the ability to act actively. Beyond the first island chains, that is, where its commercial and security interests are most exposed. More interestingly, the Fujian represents a major step forward toward a modern and autonomous command capability. We are witnessing what could be the evolution of Chinese maritime doctrine, which, while relying on massive fleets, will also depend on an intelligent and guided presence on the high seas. That is to say, with the ability to gather, connect, and quickly deploy naval forces in a contested area. Not counting its aircraft and escort, the Fujian alone costs between $4 and $6 billion, which is half as much as the American Gerald Ford. An aircraft carrier, as we know well in France, requires significant economic and industrial capabilities to build, but also to maintain. There is no doubt that China has the capabilities and that the Fujian is only the first of a long list. But this all the more means that Beijing is making a choice here, a decidedly strategic one, considering that dependence on maritime corridors under American control is no longer a viable option, and that pressure on its resources will be constant. Each aircraft carrier constitutes a bubble of advanced command that merges air, naval, space, and cyber operations. The revolution for China lies in these three electromagnetic catapults that replace the ski jump of the older models. The Fujian can carry about 50 aircraft, including multi-role fighters and electronic warfare planes. The catapult thus allows for the launch of heavy air power, enabling coverage of a larger area, just like its American rival. Understand that a carrier strike group is always vulnerable, but it remains irreplaceable for coordinating complex operations along strategic maritime corridors. Whether in the contested approaches of the South China Sea, the first island chain is far beyond. The Fujian alone will be a central tactical tool in redefining the regional balance. What you need to understand is that for a long time, China favored a defense model focused on access denial and protecting its coastline. Its aircraft were land-based, while its missile batteries and submarines were designed to push back and deny access to anyone entering the area. The main idea was simple: to prevent intrusion into these waters, rather than projecting power far out to sea. Aircraft carriers were not a priority. Due to a lack of capability, expertise, experience, and ambition to project power far away, the posture has changed significantly with the expansion of Chinese economic and strategic interests. From the early 2000s, the Chinese Navy shifted from a doctrine of defending nearby waters to a strategy of protecting the high seas, a change that is consistent with the evolution of China's flows and needs. Its energy supply chains extend further into the Indian Ocean, and its trade is expanding to the Middle East and Africa. All these flows represent vulnerabilities to both symmetric and asymmetric threats. Geography, politics, economy, and military are once again closely linked, transforming the world and the relationships between powers. This brings us to another point. Here, China is mainly focusing its strategy on defending its corridors, rather than on meaningless imperialism, which can be reassuring. However, we should expect the Chinese Navy to play an increasingly global and therefore important role in oceanic spaces, for better or for worse. But all this won't happen overnight. The United States has had established and mastered experience with carrier strike groups since 1945. They are masters of a network of alliances, regional bases, and reliable partners capable of sharing air and maritime surveillance, but also of hosting or supporting American assets. China, on the other hand, is starting from scratch. Except for the modest and limited base in Djibouti, Beijing does not have solid bases abroad, nor allies ready to provide joint coverage. The Americans spread the risk across several fleets, aircraft carriers, and allied airfields around the globe. China, constrained by geographical and political limits, therefore paradoxically has to rely more on aircraft carriers to fill this gap. The aircraft carrier has become a vital instrument for China, ensuring the country's economic survival, and, in fact, an instrument of its rivalry with American power. In Asia and around the world, building an aircraft carrier is a challenge for any major power, but fully mastering it is another matter. The increased transparency of ocean areas, advanced surveillance technologies, long-range sensors, and precision strike networks now make the movements of aircraft carriers largely visible, forcing a rethink of tactics at the expense of surprise. However, this visibility should be put into perspective, as satellite surveillance is not yet fully real-time and continuous. The exact positions of the ships must be confirmed regularly. A strike could target a location where an aircraft carrier is present. It could be where it was 10, 20, or 30 minutes ago, not where it actually is right now. And that's where we come to the point that the survival of a carrier strike group relies more on a fast and unpredictable pace. That means moving its forces faster than targeting cycles, jamming enemy sensors, and effectively coordinating aircraft, escorts, and electronic warfare systems. All of this will have to be integrated by China, and that will take time. This lack of experience will have to be addressed. China has actually been training since 2012 on its Liaoning, but while the Fujian multiplies its capabilities, it also greatly increases the rigor and experience needed to master it. Commanding and synchronizing carrier strike groups requires complex coordination, involving air wings, escorts, submarines, logistics, intelligence, and surveillance. In a contested global environment, with increasing symmetrical and asymmetrical threats, the United States has been building this experience day by day since World War II. China is still at the beginning of this path with progress to be made, especially in at-sea refueling and anti-submarine warfare. Finally, the lack of alliances and forward bases will also be a long-term problem that China should address. An isolated aircraft carrier quickly loses its effectiveness due to the lack of nearby infrastructure for repairs, support, or even intelligence sharing. China's goal will undeniably be to build a network of infrastructure capable of supporting and sustaining the full potential of the Fujian, especially along the Indian Ocean coastline. We can speculate about the role of the ports of Gwadar in Pakistan or the port of Ambotota in Sri Lanka, leased for 99 years to a Chinese company, for example, for logistics purposes. Or, more interestingly, Ream in Cambodia, modernized with China's support since 2022 to accommodate warships. If China manages to fully master the use of the Fujian and address the challenges, the strategic advantages will be considerable. Whereas a Liaoning of Soviet origin carried 36 aircraft, the Fujian, remember, carries 50. Its SDCA capabilities, with the help of the KJ-600, will extend the radar horizon far beyond what Chinese coastal installations can offer, while its electronic warfare squadrons will be able to effectively disrupt enemy detection. The Fujian offers greater persistence in the area and extended operational range, and will strike harder and farther. The vessel will also play a key role in coordinating long-range strikes, intelligence missions, surveillance, and reconnaissance. This will allow China to dictate the tempo of operations in areas that its coastal missiles and island garrisons could not previously reach. In the event that electronic warfare actions degrade satellite communications and its networks, the aircraft carrier could become a platform where the High Command continues to observe, decide, and direct the battle. Power projection, control of the air and maritime space, deterrence, intelligence, crisis management, support for operations, autonomy. No land-based headquarters can offer this tactical flexibility in contested waters, and no automated system can yet replace the presence of a commander at sea. Able to make decisions in the uncertainty of combat, the aircraft carrier ultimately has perhaps never been as important as it is in the world of 2025. It is there to fill the gaps and respond to the growing number of threats and needs, whether in times of war or peace. At a time when many thought it was obsolete, China adopted it. Ultimately, China is following in the footsteps of the Americans and can no longer be satisfied with a simple access denial strategy. This fragile stance would endanger the very foundations of its power. The Fujian and its successors are therefore not instruments of territorial conquest, but rather tools of command. They extend China's defensive capabilities. In the summer, it maintains its control over vital maritime routes, which fuel its economy and shape its strategic environment. The real challenge for China today is, both institutionally and technically, to integrate its new capabilities and develop the expertise necessary to reach their full potential. This will be a challenge that is never simple for any country deploying aircraft carriers. The short-term consequences are that these ships will allow Beijing to extend its reach without fundamentally disrupting the global or regional military balance. The United States, in any case, maintaining their oceanic superiority. However, their mere presence at sea, east of Taiwan, or in the Strait of Malacca, or in the Indian Ocean, forces regional powers to rethink their calculations. The American ability to maintain their presence is now being challenged. I hope I have provided some insights here into what the Fujian is changing for China, the oceans, and the China-United States rivalry. Do you think we are at a turning point? What consequences do you foresee? I know that some people in the military are listening to us. It could be interesting to hear your insights, anonymously, of course. Let me remind you of the simple actions, like, share, comment. It's tedious to say this, but unfortunately, it has become necessary. YouTube keeps getting worse by changing its algorithm every 2 weeks, and our videos are barely visible. So even though you're subscribed, don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications. Also, check out past videos you might have missed, the review of the Russian economy, Trump in Nigeria, and so on.
Doctrinal.